Hello and welcome to episode 19 of the Lifestyle Construction Show. I just want to say that I'm really proud of the folks who gone through the first two classes in our Lifestyle Construction 12-week program. We actually have a couple, Terry and his wife, who started a couple weeks ahead. They wanted to get a jump start. And between the two of them, they've now over about a 4 to 5 week period lost 30 pounds. Their energy levels are up, they're feeling great. And that's exactly the kind of results we expect to see for people who are following the program. So we're really excited you're here today. We're really excited for the big groups that we have going on Thursday evenings and Saturday mornings. And we'll have some upcoming free intro classes for our next groups, classes that are coming up. And so Cody, today we're going to continue with some myths that can harm our health or certainly not give us optimal health. And today we're going to talk about exercise.
Yeah, this week we're going to talk a little bit about the typical exercise that we hear people want to do or they read in magazines that they should do, and that's typically just hop on a treadmill or some form of cardio machine or just go out for a run for 45 minutes to 60 minutes, and that's typically all you need to do. And while there's certain validity to that, we also find that there's a lot more variables that are part of that puzzle. But if we can manage and control like part of that exercise a little bit more, we find that more of a high intensity interval training style of workout is a little bit better.
Yeah, Cody, we do. And just so we get to the heart of the matter as to why one of the 5 pillars is exercise and science-based exercise, is that today the Mayo Clinic, says that 35 major diseases can be attributed to from sedentary lifestyles, from lack of exercise. And we know that children today are, according to the Mayo Clinic research, more likely to die earlier than their parents, and many of those reasons are cited from sedentary diseases. So it's really important that we not only exercise and move, but that we move in a way that's efficient and gives us the best use of our time and does create the most weight loss or fat loss and the most muscle gain. It's what we're shooting for.
Right, and I think one part to keep in mind is that we're always shooting for optimal results, optimal health, and living that optimal lifestyle. And in my opinion, part of that is as we get older, being able to do things that, let's just face it, most people think that older individuals can't do or shouldn't be able to do. Anything from picking heavier stuff up off the floor, squatting, running and playing with the grandkids. And those are things that we feel as though, especially within the Lifestyle Construction Program, that you should be able to do whenever you get older. And there's a lot of research that has went into when you're an individual that only runs, how a lot of joints and ligaments tighten up over time, how it's pretty typical to have foot problems depending on the style of running and the running shoe that you use, that people suffer from after just a few years of doing things like that. So we really focus more on compound movements, from squatting to picking things up off the floor to pressing things overhead, and combining all of that stuff into some form of a high intensity style of a workout. That way that you get your heart rate up and it stays up in an elevated state, but it's not something that you have to do for 45 or 60 minutes at a time. It's something that you could do from 5 minutes to 20 minutes is typically the time domains that we're dealing with here.
Yeah, and the beauty, I think, Cody, of what we're talking about here with the high intensity exercise is not only is it more effective and more time and more time efficient. Some research says that you can actually use high intensity interval training for half the time and get 2 to 3 times the benefits in half the time that you would traditional, what we would consider cardio or aerobic training, such as swimming, biking, running. But I think the beautiful thing for somebody who enjoys swimming, biking, running, cycling, those types of traditional aerobic or cardio exercises is that if they do the right kind of high intensity interval training with the compound movements, building muscle, they will actually improve their running and cycling and swimming ability without doing so much without all the long extended time and use of our joints and muscles and body parts. So some of those things are really cool in the fact that the high intensity gives us more health benefits in many cases, more fat burning benefits, less time invested, and can improve those events if we want to go out and participate in those more traditional known cardio events.
Right, and I think that that's one piece that is very important to the puzzle, that we're not saying that those types of cardio exercises are going to be harmful for you, but if that's the only thing that you're doing, it's the only thing that you're focusing on, that's whenever it could potentially have some problems down the road. And we find that if you can build muscle in a very strategic way, in a smart way, and use that as, you know, an avenue to get better at whatever maybe sport that you like to do, then that's going to benefit you in the long run with, you know, the specific types of training that you like to do, whether that's through running or triathlons or marathons or whatever it is. But having that openness to other things is part of the, you know, one of the biggest things that we see.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned earlier was how age can play a factor, and people can have these misconceptions about, well, I'm too old to do this or do that movement or lift this or that weight. And we find that not to be at all the case. We have folks from 5 or 6 years old to in their 70s doing the same workouts and using the same movements, compound movements, and using weights, and do awesome. And some of our 60 and 70-year-olds come 5 or 6 days a week because they love it and they're addicted to it. And one of the biggest things that I have found is that these older folks a lot of times have lost the ability in many cases to do something simple like get on the floor and play with their grandkids, because they can't get up off the floor anymore. And that's one story that I can think of with a lady that has been doing CrossFit with us now for a while, and she couldn't get up out of the floor from playing with her grandchildren. And she said it was embarrassing. And now she's able to jump right up. She does burpees with us. I mean, all these things, but the big thing to her was not being able to do a burpee. It was that she can get in the floor and play with her grandkids and pop right up. And to her, that was a major, major accomplishment, a major goal. And so she's ecstatic that she's able to do those things. And going back to the younger age group, there's some research that says that children's grades can be helped by up to 15% improvement when they exercise on a regular basis. So there's so many benefits for all ages and all physical fitness levels that there's no limit for anyone who's willing to do it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, part of what you just said is that there's a huge age domain from very young to what we would consider older that can do these types of things. The door is, you know, very open for anyone with any sort of physical limitation that they feel as though they might have or that they actually might have. Anyone can do this stuff. We're not limiting it to just certain people that have certain capabilities. It's that anyone can do this stuff because it's, again, it's natural human movement that we like to focus on.
Yeah, and not only that, Cody, but again, research shows that high intensity exercise and exercise in general can help the body release endorphins that are more powerful in many cases than typical pain drugs that we would use, like morphine and things. And what we find is a lot of people say, oh, my knees hurt too bad, or oh, my elbows or my shoulders hurt too bad. And in a lot of cases, we find that just once they start using those joints again and building the muscles around those joints, that they go, oh, well, my knees feel better. Oh, wow, my shoulder feels better. Oh, wow, my elbows feel better. Or whatever those joints are, lots of times it's just inactivity and loss of the muscle around it. And so we see all these benefits. We hadn't even gotten into, Cody, you know, in this show, the benefits for bone building, muscle building. I mean, all the things that, you know, people ask me all the time, well, they say I have osteoporosis or the beginning of osteoporosis. And I tell them all the time, weight-bearing exercise is the number one thing, resistance exercise, to help build those bones. And so there's so many places and benefits we could go with this high intensity. And there's actually research from the University of South Wales that shows that high intensity interval training performed for half the time of traditional aerobic or cardio training, burns 3 times more fat, and continues the fat burn 24 to 48 hours beyond the exercise time. Whereas with traditional aerobic or cardio training, pretty much the fat burning benefits stop when the exercise stops. But with the interval training, we can burn 3 times more fat, and we're able to then burn fat 24 to 48 hours beyond when we stop exercises. That's a great advantage over aerobic training.
Right. Part of that, with a little bit of the science behind that, is essentially those glycogen storage tanks that we have in our body essentially doesn't necessarily get used up the way that we would want them to, so that we can start burning that fat. And we can definitely get into not having the glycogen in our body in another episode, and so we can just have all the fat to burn. But for the most part, that's going to be one of the biggest benefits, is that we burn through that glycogen, and then we're in that fat burning zone. And with that high intensity training, we burn through that very, very quickly. And then we're in that fat burning state for, like you just said, up to 24, 48 hours, and maybe even longer, depending on what type of training that you did. But whenever you're putting the right stress on the body, then you can be in that fat burning zone for an extended period of time.
Well, and I think that even if this seems complicated to the folks who are out there listening, understand that this is just science-based exercise. Pillar 4 of the Lifestyle Construction Program is science-based exercise. So we break this down and make it easy for people to understand exactly what we're talking about. And that's the reason that we have a 12-week program. These things can take time for people to understand. It can take time for us to explain it to folks. But this is really not that hard once you have the education to understand how and what to do. And the beauty of this is you can get a ton of benefit from a short amount of exercise when done properly based on science. And remember, we're measuring the results. So we know that these folks are improving. We're not guessing. We're not telling them that. We're showing them. We're proving it to them through testing.
Absolutely. And we know that exercise is one of the biggest questions that people have about how long should they be exercising for, what types of exercise, how often they should be doing it. So if you have any questions about that, please just comment below, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, or send us a message on either one of those channels, and just let us know. And that way maybe we can continue to talk about the more specifics behind science-based exercise and high-intensity interval training if we need to.
Yeah, and we just want to make sure that when we exercise that we're burning fat and we're building muscle. And unfortunately, a lot of the more traditional ideas don't always build the muscle. They may burn the fat, but we lose the muscle building benefits. And when we do that, it makes it much easier for the body to start accumulating more fat, and or, unfortunately, in many cases, burning muscle as we exercise. And we certainly want to make sure that we're building muscle, burning fat, and not anything else. So that's what we want to make sure of. But I would say this: if you're not doing anything, if you're not exercising, if you're sitting at a desk at work, please get up and start moving somehow. Walk to the mailbox, do something to increase your activity level every day.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit of something is always going to be better than nothing. I couldn't have said that any better myself, Billy. But I think that'll do it for episode 19 this week. We'll be back next week with episode 20. If you have any questions or comments, again, YouTube and Facebook, that's where we're located at Lifestyle Construction. Got a lot of new things coming your way in the next few weeks. So as always, we'll see you again next week, and thanks for watching.
See you next week. What we start the morning with is the most important factor throughout the rest of the day. Seems to be that the research would indicate. So starting the morning with good fat versus the low fat ideas that we're talking about here is a much better way to help control that response throughout the day.